Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer Dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
To resuming our sitting together, to resuming our practice. So thank you very much, Josh, for coming this morning. We're looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Catherine. It's really lovely to be with you all again. And at the beginning of our meeting, during our warm welcome, it was mentioned that this is like the beginning of term. And if you live or have been a child in the UK, you will remember this time of year after the summer holiday. And we've had a summer pause, which coincides with the children's summer holiday, as a time of returning to something. Sometimes it's a time of hope, sometimes dread, perhaps possibility. And I think someone mentioned this morning the pencil case, and I remember as a child I used to usually have a new pencil case each autumn. I thought of it as the pencil case of possibility, and my pencils would be sharpened in anticipation of the term to come. And I wonder, when you woke up this morning, what you were thinking and feeling about being here this morning. Perhaps it's so long ago now that you can't quite remember, but what is your first motivation really for being here? Thinking of those days of hope and perhaps disappointment. In the late 50s and early 60s, all boys wore short trousers until they were 12. And on 1 September, when I was 12, I went back to school. And I think my mother had forgotten that boys at that time were due to have long trousers. And so I was one of only two people in my year who turned up with short trousers and bare legs. You could imagine how that might feel. The next day I had long trousers. So usually at this time of year, someone in an institution says something about how the next year's going to be. And I wondered what would I want to say to you, and also to say to myself about the practice, to encourage you. And what I want to say is, have faith in yourself as the way. This is something that Mizumi Roshi said to his student Karen Mazan Miller. And in her wonderful book, Paradise in Plain Sight, she wrote, "So I'll prop it here like a sign." So for me, as I go through the coming months, and you may wish to as well, perhaps remember, have your faith in yourself as the way. It's about you. Dogen said, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. But if we take the first part, really what we're doing here is becoming intimate with this self that we take through the world constantly. Have faith in yourself as the way. I wonder what some of your inspirations have been during this past month, and what you would want to bring to us today. Perhaps you will when we talk a little bit later. There are a couple of things that I caught in my net, if you like, during August. And the first is an email correspondence with Denise Alvarez. She said, "I have penciled a precept meeting for tonight, but in my head I remember that we will not meet in September. Who is right, my agenda or me?" And of course, she was referring to her agenda as her diary. But I wrote back to her and I said, because there was no precept meeting that night, "Your reflection for today, Denise, is trust yourself and not your agenda." And it was light-hearted and just letting her know that there was no meeting. But after I wrote it, I kept thinking about what I'd written. Trust yourself and not your agenda. Trust yourself and not your agenda. Maybe nothing is random. And that echoed through my mind for some time. And that felt like it was something I was writing to myself. I have all sorts of agendas, but beyond my agendas, I have a self that I can trust completely. Our agendas bring us and get us to practice, and once here, the invitation is to trust ourselves, to trust this practice beyond any ideas we have about ourselves and this practice. There's a beautiful piece by Rumi. I'm sure you'll know it. He says, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense." And I've always thought about that as meeting someone else in a field beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. But I realized that in this practice, in Zazen, there's the possibility that I can meet myself there beyond any ideas I have about myself or the practice. The second inspiration I've had during the last month is a crime thriller called Vienna Blood. And it's based in Vienna in 1906, during a time of transition and turbulence before the First World War. In a way, a time not different from our own. And it was a time when the way we think about and experience our inner worlds was changing. So there is Oscar Reinhardt, a detective using conventional methods for the time, and he feels pressure to solve the murder cases and get convictions. Perhaps like us in some ways, wanting to solve our problems, to sort ourselves out, and quickly. And he's shadowed by Dr. Max Lieberman, who's developing and using the new insights of Freud. And gradually, rather than shadowing Oscar, Max offers him deeper insights into each case and to his own inner world. They become friends, and when they establish that each case is not simple, a mystery in fact, Max says, "Welcome to the case, Inspector Reinhardt." Perhaps we could say to ourselves as we enter this practice once again, "Welcome to the mystery of my life. Welcome to the mystery, Josh." On Tuesday, last Tuesday during inquiry, Flint talked about two aspects of practice which are expressed firstly by Hongxi, who was a teacher in the late 11th, early 12th century in China. And he said this practice is to wander into the center of the circle and wonder. Just to wander into the center of the circle and wonder. And a contemporary writer, Maggie Smith, he quoted, says, "I'm out with lanterns looking for myself. I'm out with lanterns looking for myself." This agenda we have is always with us. We're always managing it. And I think it's tempting to think that the agenda is it. But if we're studying the self, it's something to turn towards and become intimate with. And during any retreat or Sangha meeting, so many thoughts come and go all the time. And it's almost like we lower our agenda onto, like a template, onto the meeting, the morning. And we have opinions and thoughts about it, which is just normal. Like the Rakasyu, that's pretty weird. Opening the Zendo, what's all that about? Sitting, when is that bell going to ring? The verses, I don't really understand them, they're confusing. The walking, I just drift off walking around my room. The Dharma talk, wonderful. The breakout rooms, which we have at Nothing Missing, I'm never sure how to be there, not sure what to say. Informal time together at the beginning and the end, I like that part. And all of these come and go as we sit through our time together. They're just part of everything that happens and part of something to meet and to study. There's a wonderful book called A Light in the Mind by Carolyn Atkinson. And in it, she refers to the poem, The Buddha's Last Instruction. And I was going to read a little bit about what she says rather than reading the poem. She says, in the Buddha's Last Instruction, Mary Oliver describes the final teaching from the Buddha. Make of yourself a light, said the Buddha, before he died. An old man, he lay down between two sala trees, and he might have said anything, knowing it was his final hour. The teaching of a lifetime comes down to this one suggestion. Make of yourself a light. Be a light unto yourself. And she goes on to say, here's what I would suggest. We don't have to be huge floodlights. Let us be small and ordinary candles. Make of yourself a light, the Buddha said. Be a light unto yourself. We sit down in the darkness of our lives, and our practice is this one small candle that helps bring us light and clarity and understanding. We sit and we sit, knowing that we're not needed, knowing how ordinary we finally are, and yet gradually, ever so gradually, we find ourselves turning into something of inexplicable value, ordinary, yes, and priceless too, each one of us. Her teacher was Kobanchino Roshi, and he died trying to save his daughter in a swimming accident in Switzerland in 2002, and his daughter also died at that time. And just before he died, they asked him, why do we sit? Why do we sit? And this is his final teaching. He says, we sit to make life meaningful. The significance of our life is not experienced in trying to create some perfect thing. We must simply start with accepting ourselves. Sitting brings us back to actually who and where we are. This can be very painful. If we can't accept ourselves, we are living in ignorance this darkest night. We may still be awake, but we don't know where we are. We cannot see. The mind has no light. Practice is this candle. in our very darkest room. I think on Flint's Rakasu, certainly during his entrustment as a teacher, he was given the verse, realization, neither general nor particular, is effort without desire. Perhaps the desire is the agenda, and actually what we're asked to do is bring ourselves into this circle of practice. With our lanterns, go looking for ourselves. David Chadwick, after a lifetime of being with Suzuki Roshi, was asked in a radio interview, what was the one thing that you would take from Suzuki Roshi's teachings? And he said, it's actually the Nike slogan, just do it. Just do this practice. So in the coming months, when different moods and ideas and thoughts come to you, in any situation, whoever you're with, maybe we can just keep that wonderful teaching from Razumi Roshi. Have faith in yourself as the way. Thank you very much.